They need Jimmy to do. They need Jimmy every time he throws it to hit the receiver right between the eyes. That's exactly what they need to do.
Harlan.
Let's bring Kevin Harlan on the show, who called the game last night and jinxed Steph Curry's free throws.
Man.
What were you doing, Kevin?
Well, I don't, had Reggie not made such a big deal of it, it would have gone under the radar. And, he was up there. He couldn't hear us. I guess he just figured that we probably had said that was his first miss of the season, which it was, and came into the game 22 of 22. He had hit a shot earlier. I think it was a technical, so he was 23 of 23, but we didn't get that part out. But as it turned out, that was the miss, and they had some fun with it, which was great. Unfortunately, the Dubs lost that game, and now they've got to regroup a little bit here and kind of figure out what's wrong with their defense.
And luckily, Kevin, you weren't to blame for the loss because I think they lost by more than 2.
Right.
I got to check my notes.
Yeah.
I got to consult my notes here, my box score. But what did you think about the relative chippiness of an October game between an upstart Phoenix and a Golden State team that I think has won 4 rings?
Well, the thing that probably is not surprising is that they were at each other, and that Booker, who just idolizes Clay, and I think Clay's got a great appreciation for what Devin is doing, and maybe sees a part of himself in the young player for the Suns. I think there's a pretty good relationship and a mutual admiration going on, but once that technical was leveled and Clay was tossed, Phoenix got really juiced, and they were energized by it. And Golden State's response was different than I thought. I thought they would be the same way, and they kind of went the opposite way. So it was a little surprising. They got it to single digits late, as we know, but then Phoenix answered and went on to win. And they'll look at this, and I know Steve just feels right now that we talked to him before the game last night that the core that is so experienced and decorated is outnumbered by the group that needs to really, pull the rope and keep their hands on the rope. And that probably is been a little tug stronger the other way as opposed to the core 4, core 3 players that have had such a nice, push. Looney and Clay and Curry and Draymond are forceful guys, but just by sheer numbers, you're relying on Poole and Moody and Wiseman and down the line, and the young players probably right now are tilting that balance a little bit, and that is part of the growing of the team. And part of what is so difficult about bridging, what is still a sustainable locomotive in those 4 guys who have won, and trying to find the replacements with on-the-job training so that you're not missing a beat. That's a tough thing to do. And it's tough because you can see other teams have tried it and have failed. This team is right on the cusp of making that happen, and probably not that far away from having a lot of this click. But right now, it can be uncomfortable, and last night the reaction was probably not what Steve wanted to see from the ejection.
The great Kevin Harlan is with us here on Willard and Dibs 95.7 The Game. So, Kevin, I'm fascinated by that conversation you had with Steve Kerr, because my read going into the game is, boy, my bet is that Phoenix is going to really, really want this, kind of a measuring stick, while the Warriors are still exploring their matchups and figuring out who can play what and where, and that kind of leads to their defense. Am I maybe onto something there? Did you get the impression in talking to Steve Kerr that he's still in exploration mode?
Oh, he is up to his ass in alligators, man. He is trying to. He is. Can I say that?
Yeah, you just did.
He is trying. First of all, he's bringing in a new defensive coordinator because Mike is gone, and they've had some brain drain from that organization. But the bench, is still they're still trying to get their paces set. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'm just saying that with a lot of change, comes adjustment. And you're exactly right. He's right now trying to get the team to buy into the defense, which was the big component of last year's winning push when everybody got healthy once the postseason began. But he's trying to figure out what groups play well together. Tinkering is the word to use with that lineup, and he's not close. On the other end, he is close, but he's not satisfied is the word I'm looking for. Satisfied with what he's seen, and last night was an indication. Clay leaves, who's going to fill that slot? And you bring in Poole, and not that he was bad, but it's going to just take some time for this to work out. But they're going to be competitive. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make a push, and they're very much going to be in that conversation, in late May, and who's going to represent the West. Clippers are deeper. Phoenix, I think, is on the road to being deeper. The Jay Crowder thing has kind of messed them up a little bit. But listen, that Phoenix team, what happened to them? They were beaten into a weird way with that semi-final matchup against, or maybe the first round matchup against the Pelicans, and then Dallas, countered, and they did things that Phoenix didn't have an answer for. Phoenix did not have an answer for New Orleans or Dallas in the playoffs, and we know they faded and kind of robbed from all of us the chance to see what would have been a monumental Western Conference final, but they were not right. And I don't know that they're completely right now. Crowder is on the trading block supposedly and wants a contract and maybe brought off the bench, and that's not what they want to do, and that has been an issue. Crowder was a big voice on that team in that locker room. So for them to win the way they did last night with kind of the tumultuous third quarter going on and Clay getting, yanked, I think that was probably a very empowering moment for them, and they showed it. They answered, and they collected themselves, even though they didn't lose anybody with an ejection. But it was a rattling part of the game, and they responded well. So Phoenix is who we think they are. They are a strong team. I think they're trying to put Paul in a different light and role, and that's going to take most of the season to make both parties feel comfortable. And we know the story for the Warriors, a defending champ that's going to have an X on their back every game they walk into, biggest game on the schedule for every team they face, and that's just going to be the world they live in here until they get these younger players up and running, and that will be an interesting watch, but not one to fret over. It's just part of the world that Steve's got to operate within right now.
Kevin Harlan here on 95.7 The Game, and the nature of the West is so deep now. So do you think that the Warriors can bide their time, kind of slow play the regular season, and then, for lack of a better term, be able to flip the switch again come April and compete with Denver, the Clippers, Phoenix, New Orleans, and others?
Well, New Orleans, their biggest problem is health, and they got Ingram and concussion protocol, and they got Zion, who's I think we're going to be on the 24/7 watch with him and just how he is, physically going through this season. So that's a question mark. I think that Kawhi and George, their health, and they're easing them both back into the swing of things, Kawhi in particular, but they're deep. The Clippers are incredibly deep, and I think very, very good, and they're coached very well, and that will be a team that will be where we think they're going to be in May. I definitely think the Warriors are going to be that team we think they are and have been. Last year at this time, I don't know that any of us really kind of thought that they would win a championship. They went in with, very low sights, thinking that maybe we'll sneak up on some people if Clay can get back and be what he once was. And as it turned out, they got Clay back and they lost Steph, and then Steph came back when the playoffs began, and it was a beautiful it was a beautiful run. And this year, I think the emphasis is really keeping those guys healthy. Steve wants to watch their minutes. He is not going to beat them into a 35-minute per night season. There's no way with all of them. Now he's going to get an earful because they're going to argue, but it's going to pay off later on. But this season, as weird as it may sound, is going to be about developing these kids. 1 year at Arkansas for Moody, 12 games in the G League for Kuminga. I mean, Wiseman hasn't played in a year. and these are 3 players, and then the others that are going to come in, and they're going to make a real impact on this team. But it's going to be a process, and I think that we all probably shouldn't expect a defending champion to steamroll, but a defending champion to rebuild on the move and still be competitive and compete at the end when it really matters. So less minutes for the veterans, more for the kids, more mixing and matching. I think that's going to be the next month for sure for the team as they try to figure out what they are.
Kevin, it's just great stuff. The broadcast was a ton of fun last night. You guys are doing a great job, and to squeeze us into your travel schedule today, we really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my privilege. Thanks for calling. Great to be on with you, and we'll be out there again soon to watch that team. And I'm a big fan. You know, I worked with Steve on the video game, the 2K video game. He was my partner at Turner. You know, at the end of the day, it's your coach and general manager. And luckily, they've got this ownership that is willing to spend. But those 2 guys, like if I'm an NBA fan, and I know there are no better fans than out in the Bay Area of the NBA than Warrior fans, and they've had great success. Those are the 2 right guys. The messages every game are the right messages, and that's what would give me hope, if anything. So 2-2 now. Who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
October.
Do us a favor. Go easy on Steph Curry at the foul line, if you wouldn't mind.
You know, he is so intuitive. Like, he knows everything. You know, people think, they don't hear the cat calls. They don't, and he didn't hear us. But I know that he knew that he had not missed this season, and probably knew that we were going to be talking about it. And sure enough, we were. So it was a nice little intersection of him turning and pointing, and us talking about it, and made for kind of a unique moment in our NBA schedule for sure.
So good. So
Thanks,
good. Kevin, we'll talk to you again soon.
Guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Fun to be on. Thank you again.
Yeah,
Bye.
appreciate you. All right, there he goes.
Man.
Kevin Harlan with us, the absolute best.
He made Steph miss.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. That's going to stick with him all year.